Your show's rubbish.
1, go.
Hello, this is the Trout Spinners podcast with me, Mars Pennell, and a Mr. Gary Forrester. Or, to give me his full introduction, boo, you're unbelievable. All right, so that was...
Thank you.
Gary.
It's like Michael Parkinson.
Yeah, welcome. Take a seat, sir. Take a seat.
I've been worried about saying this because I'll just quickly say that last week I said that I EMF Unbelievable. I put that in our library because when I was younger, I used to imagine walking out to TV chat shows or award ceremonies with that music playing. Now, one thing I just want to clarify is that that might seem arrogant. There was no arrogance. I wasn't expecting that I should be walking out to that. I was just dreaming that it would happen. I was never thinking, oh God, I'm already, God, I've got some bread material on my stand up. I've got a bit of stuff. I should be coming out to that music. I never thought, oh, I should be coming out to that. I always thought, oh, I just dream down. Anyway, yeah, I'm Gary Forrester, and that's it for me today. See you later.
One day it will happen. Anyway, this is the Trout Spinners podcast, a retrospective of the Ricky Gervais, Steve Merchant, and Karl Pilkington XFM shows. And basically, each week we listen to a new show, we listen to an old show, and we look over it and we inspect it and try and find goodies and treats and XFM.
We take it apart and we look under the bonnet and all the analogies that you can think of. We do that to the show. Some people say we repeat ourselves when we're doing that a little bit. We do repeat ourselves a bit. I just did it just then, but some people like that. So if you do like us repeating ourselves, do let us know. Get in touch with us because we're after some good feedback at the moment.
Some people say that we repeat ourselves, so sometimes, if you're feeling a bit low.
When I was speaking there, I could see in Miles' eyes, he wasn't listening. He was just focusing. And he does that when he's got an email to read and I'm saying something. He was just focused, and he was so focused. And I was like, are you listening to me or what? And he was so focused to do that bit. Did it, and it worked. Anyway, yes. So
thank you.
This is episode, I think we're doing 23 today. I think is that 20? Wow, time flies. This was in actually Mars will tell you the exact date. I was just kind of riffing. It's roughly February. I think. Mars is now going to speak for a little while, and he's not going to stumble on his words. If he does, he's not going to allow to edit this, so you have to put it out exactly how it goes out. Mars is going to give a little précis, a little outline of the show, and then we're gonna discuss it. So go on, Mars.
No.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Sorry.
Okay, cool. This week we discuss episode 24, February 1st, 2003. Karl slags off clairvoyants, Ricky slags off God, and Stephen slags off Karl, then punches him in the arm. This is also the birth of Karl in a film. Gary, I ask you every single week, what were you doing on February 1st, 2003?
I was...
Not radio. Come on.
Yeah, come on. Be with it. Come on, you can't just say nothing, Karl. I was...
Fat baby on telly. Fat baby.
I don't know, I was working at Asda in some form or other, I think.
Fish counter? Mr. Fish?
No, actually, no, I'd done at Asda, done at John Lewis. Where did I work next? Can't remember. Maybe I was just in a hammock somewhere, probably.
Yeah. And when you came up to buy a hammock, did they have, boom, he's unbelievable, when you made a sale?
Down. You're in a hammock. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know what I was doing, mate. What were you doing? Well, because I never asked you, but you were at school and stuff, weren't you?
13, mate. I was 13.
13? I was like 19. How can you... For God's sake, why are you so young?
I remember because that's probably the age where you started high school, and I'd actually started high school under the worst circumstances because I broke my leg.
Really?
And how I broke my leg was, those sort of bouncy play areas that you go to when you're a kid or a teenager in my case.
Yeah.
and there were like two and like ball pits and death slides and all that stuff. And there's two of these sort of rollers that you sort of throw yourself through and you sort of roll through. Anyway, the lads I went with, they were trying to show off and they went over the top one. like the top roly bit, and they were doing these backflips and landing on their feet quite theatrically. I was quite a short chap then, well I still am, and 5'8", and I went over, did a backflip, but then landed on the sole of my feet. So the sort of crux, the top of my foot, I sat
That's
on.
where you want to land, isn't it? Like that's the idea.
I sort of landed on, like, my feet completely caved in, they concaved, and I landed and broke the sort of ridge of my foot.
Did
and
you
I
go to the hospital and say, hello, I've got a concaved leg?
No, what I actually did was I went at the top of my lungs. I shouted, "Shit! Fuck!"
Yeah, well, you did.
I did get a free Coke out of it, and loads of people were, give me a lot of love and attention, which is, that's all you wanted at 13, isn't it?
And that's since then, that's the only love and attention Miles has got. And I'm one to speak before you say, that's a tragic, harrowing story.
Yeah.
So thanks for brightening it up.
It was my advantage, for a lot of, people sort of, they do give you a bit of sympathy, but then when that passes, then you're one of the norms. You're fucked.
You're one of the two-leggers.
So, Gary, completely unprompted, what are your initial thoughts?
Yeah, good editing skills. You just there's a little bit of audio that's been cut out there. I to be honest, it's not one of my favourite shows. I don't think there's any particularly really memorable moments. It's not bad, and I got more than 5 quotes. So there's more than 5 really funny quotes. And we've said before, Mark Commode says, if a film's got 6 laughs, you're doing really well. If it's a comedy, even the less good shows, such as this one, in my opinion, have a lot of laughs in them. But there's nothing that stands out really. Karl in a film is very good fit, and actually it shows Karl off in a brilliant light. He's a brilliant editor, and for him to conceive and to edit that together is very good. And I think it shows that he's a very good editor, which is what Andrew Phillips told us, didn't he? When he was, Karl is actually a very good editor. But apart from that, there's no standout moments, and I'm left kind of thinking, it's one. Yeah, I'll get halfway through and usually skip. Obviously, I listen back fully because we were doing this, and it was good. It was fine. It was entertaining. There's funny bits, but they're kind of isolated and on their own. They're not really surrounded by other good audio. They're there, and it's good. It's a good show. I would listen to it. It's just not my favourite show.
To give you one of those examples, actually, I find it's like a show of two halves. Like, it really kicks in for me towards the end of the show, where Karl is they're having a go at Karl because he doesn't fact check stuff, and he's saying, talking about a monkey that's had crap tattooed on its head, which is it's quite funny. But then he said, why do you need to know all the facts? Why? Because some other mentalist believes it. So they'd make all that stuff like, you spout your idiocy on a radio station, and so he's saying, like, to go for that much effort. And then they talk about the Iceman, and the Iceman chat for me is like the highlight of this bit. He says, why do you find that more fascinating? Simply because it's true. I find it more fascinating from Ricky.
Can I just say to you, it's interesting you say that, because I find the Iceman chat definitely the least, the thing I like listening to on this episode the least. I've always found it least. And actually, if I'm ever on this episode and it gets to the Iceman chat, I'll skip over it. I just don't find it interesting. I don't find it that funny. It's kind of with Karl's stories, it's either they're funny if they're very absurd, or they're absolutely based on truth. Now, the story Karl's telling is based on truth. They did discover it, but there's just never. I think one thing I'm listening to the show and I'm thinking, especially with the Iceman chat, it's a good example. There was potential for much funnier lines. Now, I'm not saying I listen to the show and I can come up with funnier stuff than Ricky, Karl, and Steve. I can't. But after you listen to these shows time and time again, you start to think. Like, there's a few moments in this show where I think, there was such good potential for Ricky to say something like da 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 da, or something like specifically like, or give one of his particular insults at that moment to Karl. And so I'm left feeling frustrated during this show because I feel it's kind of got a lot of wasted opportunities. And the Iceman chat for me is just not that interesting.
Well,
it's just,
I don't think something has to be, like laugh out loud funny. He doesn't need to react to something. Ricky and Karl, of course they might have missed opportunities, but that
of course it doesn't need to be laughed at.
But what I'm saying is the context of the conversation is more interesting to me because it's a conversation about what is truth. why should you believe something just because it's written down? Anyone could write something on the internet. You don't even think it's fact. But what I like about the Iceland chat is they're having a debate over like what interests Karl, like what does he find amazing? Why do people find that amazing as opposed to a monkey that's had a tattoo on its head, which is funnier. And then he's saying, but what's the point? So they dig him up again and find out that he's eating seeds and nuts. So leave it. Just bury it. That line, that will be in my favourite quotes, but that is I just like how quickly he delivers that. And it's because it's kind of true, isn't it? You go, yeah, people lived before us and they eat seeds and nuts. Yeah. And you're like, so what? You're like, but then they're saying, Steve and Karl, which they do try to get one up on Karl, don't they, here? Because it's very easy to look clever against Karl, which is something that I'm quite critical about them. It's easy for me to, sit in a room full of bonobos and
air conditioners.
A mentalist.
No, but I just I agree. It's kind of interesting hearing them talk about that point that is a deeper and wider point than the actual context of the conversation they're having, which is about the Iceman. But I just feel the way Ricky and Steve react to it just doesn't generate the comedy it potentially could have done. That's just for me. But, Miles and I are just going to now have a 10-minute argument off air about this particular. Come back. Welcome back. We didn't edit anything out there, but
I like at the start of the episode they're talking about Karl was having one of his many rants about the builders. So imagine his job. He has to come around. He doesn't understand why builders have to come around so early. If it gets dark, put the light on. So Karl seems to have a pervasive.
But that's kind of like, again, Karl's stupidity takes a very intelligent form, because even though that is, if you think logically, builders kind of work by the day and obviously it's much easier for them with natural light, but it is a completely logical thing if you take all that out to just think, if it gets dark, turn the light on. Do you know what I mean? You can turn the light. We don't live in a caveman society. Miles grew up in one in Ipswich, but we don't live. We've got electricity now. So
we could probably do an episode on Karl and builders. My favourite one is it's going to be in a later episode.
Hides the biscuits and.
Hang on a minute. If we're here recording, that means your radio's tuned to XFM, which I assume he's listening to.
Yeah. That's because Karl Will's suddenly because he really is slagging them off, and if they heard, they probably would wipe.
We say, what's the pub like across the road? Well, it doesn't matter, isn't it? You're working in there. You don't do what? Think of saying that to a builder. He probably wants to know if to get cheese and tomato sandwich and not an hour lunch break like Karl Pilkington. Because it's but that's so funny. The fact that Karl, I wouldn't dream of saying that to a builder. But there was a time when I was my toilet was blocked for about 2 weeks in my old flat, and it was so obviously if you don't have a toilet.
It's easy. Just pop the U-bend, down the U-bend, and
I just spat at my.
Oh God!
So a few times I'm glad you're not sitting the side.
He does project with his saliva sometimes.
With the syllables. It was funny.
Yeah, go on, I'm interested in this story actually. What happened?
Oh, the toilet was blocked for about 2 weeks, right? And we weren't sure why it was blocked. And I tried the plunger and all that stuff that you only get in comics, don't you? Plungers. And I just stuck my hand down, did all that stuff, got bleach, acid, pretty much acid just to dissolve whatever was in there. Anyway, I went on one of my rants like, what the fuck is this agency doing? Why don't they just come around and sort the fucking toilet out? Having to use the bathroom at my work, being very, very angry and passionate about this all came to a head when eventually the agency came round, and we were quite on friendly terms. And I was like, to my girlfriend, I said, right, I'm going to give him a piece of my mind. I'm going to have such a fucking go at him. He walks through the door and I was like, hello, you're right. Come in. Do you want a cup of tea? You're right.
Yeah.
Do not worry about the toilet. Do not. Is it, mate, don't worry about it. It's been absolutely fine. We'll be going in a bucket. Don't worry about it.
The thing is, I know that's true. I know, as Ricky said to Karl, I know that's true. I know, I've seen that. But you've also just heard a preview of Miles's one-man show he's doing in Edinburgh this year. He's doing a little toilet blockage show.
Well, good job there's no Edinburgh this year, because no one's going to want to hear that. But it's that sort of unbridled rage. You don't know where to direct it. But Karl...
I assume you were like 21, 22 then. A lot of people are like
you
that. You were 31.
It was in the future, yeah. But Karl will be that director. He's got no qualms with, think of saying that to a builder.
I know, yeah. Bear in mind, he's not saying it. He's exaggerating to what he actually said to the builder. But the main thing is, like, saying what he's saying about them on a national or a local radio station where they could well be listening, actually really slagging them off. It's like, it's obviously I don't go around slagging people off, and it's kind of not. No, I don't. But you kind of, people slag me off, but I'm generous to them. But you don't go around slagging people off. But there's certain people you never slag off. Your hairdresser. You always, because you don't want them to think, oh, I'm just going to cut a bit into his hair, the wanker, you know. There's a hairdresser I went to. He loves football. I like football. He's obsessed with it. He's he's an Arsenal fan. He's really getting on like Spurs are fucking wankers, you know. Like, and I was like, yeah, the wankers. I support Watford, but I really love Arsenal as well. But so just because
I don't know what that means.
I know, but a lot of builders, there's been those expose shows where you do pop a little bit of urine in the salt cellar. You do wipe your genitals on the kitchen sponge. You know, you can do these things. So they kind of, you're in their hands. So
and you should never ever slag off anyone that is serving you food.
Yeah, absolutely.
100%. No, and definitely not whether it's a fast food joint or 5-star Michelin star restaurant. You do not slag them off because you are in their beck and call, like you are under their power, even if you're paying, which I try to avoid. But
there was a funny I subscribe to Viz. I'd advise anyone to do the same because it's very good. So I just get their sort of quotes and things, and they have these pretend little things where as if someone's writing into a problem page or solution page, and it was just I can't find it, so I just try and paraphrase it. It said, if you send your food back at a pub, you're basically asking the chef to rub his genitals all over it. And I should know, I was the head chef of a small rural countryside restaurant until they installed CCTV.
Really?
Yeah, no, but that's not a true story. That's just really, no, not really. But yeah, that's funny. Anyway, yeah, that didn't work because you were treating it as something that was real. Like you thought that there was a real story behind that.
He opens the bag. There's 32 Levi's. He opens the bag. It's a jacket.
It's one of my favourite lines. Yeah, and obviously we talked about Karl in a film. Very good. Actually, the highlight of the show for me.
The Twix sense.
The Twix sense is great. They never really stick with that name. They never mention the Twix sense again because it's obviously to do with that particular film. But it's a great name for the show. But yeah, great editing skills, and I just love it because the name of the child in it is Cole, isn't it? So it sounds like so when Cole was listening to it, he watched that film. It does sound like she's saying Karl. And
that's a terrifying scene though in that film when they're under the bed sheets and she turns around at one point, the girl, and she's like just being it's the young girl and Haley Joel Osment obviously, and she's being like sick, but the sick is like porridge. It's like Scottish oat porridge, and it's coming out. I remember seeing that when that film was all the rage. That was a very popular film at that time with one of his M. Night Shyamalan's infamous twist endings. That was particularly repulsive. That was one of the first horror films I remember that I saw, and I was like, ugh.
Yes, well, it's not really a horror. It's more of a psychological kind of thriller.
But they're more horrifying than a horror film, I find.
Yeah, I haven't watched it all the way because it's a film.
Well, it's also not the King's Speech. So
speech. So
which is the only film that Gary's seen ever.
If the king isn't trying to overcome a stutter, I'm not interested. That's why. But no, I have actually seen a lot more films than I let on, but I haven't seen that. But I remember when it came out, like I was at school, probably 14, 15. Everyone was talking about it. Everyone was. So I was like, and we went to a classroom. Someone had just written on the whiteboard, as it was, "He's dead." In big letters, like just it's like everyone was trying to give away that he's dead,
I once had a friend who end of story, who was
see you later next week.
He was for whatever reason we sort of fell out, and we always had like this sort of back and forth teasy relationship, and there was one lesson where I just went through every film and ruined the ending. Captain Jack, dead man's chest, he dies, all right, Bond, he whatever. Shag some woman.
That truly is prattish behaviour, and I would usually let people off that because you're obviously young then, you're a child. But I've known Mars to do that sort of thing, me, but not really. Yeah, that's an interesting anecdote, Mars. Thanks for that. Anyway, yeah. So sorry, I was just trying to think of a way to respond.
In this episode, they talk about being Ricky Gervais's mate. I wish I was Ricky Gervais's mate. Who says that? Who says that?
That's a good
point.
But
they asked Karl, so what do you think of it? What do you think of being Gervais's mate? He says, imagine if you were sharing a cell room with Ricky. He says, that'd be good, wouldn't it? That'd be good. That'd be good. Well, I'd be the daddy, wouldn't I?
Carl says an interesting thing. He says it's all right for about an hour, and I can totally imagine that with Ricky. And actually, if you listen, Ricky actually, he's not like furiously annoyed, but he really takes umbrage to that. Like, usually you say something about Ricky, he's got big fat tits, and he'll laugh a lot. He'll say, yeah, like, I'll get him out and you can suck him, or, whatever. He just completely laughs on. But when Karl says it's all right for about an hour, and then it starts, he's like, we went to lunch, that was more than an hour. We met, like, you can tell he's actually, he kind of takes offence to that, saying it's all right for an hour. Because I think he likes the piss being taken out of him, but actually with that one, for some reason, he kind of he does take umbrage.
Well, no one wants to hear that they're bad company. No, that they're intolerable to hang out with.
Yeah, but most of the time, Ricky kind of, if Steve sort of says that, like says, I've got friends of friends who say he's must be annoying to be with. Ricky laughs along, and he completely elongates the joke. He makes it longer, so he kind of just goes with it. But that little instance, I've always thought he does take offence to that, and he doesn't like say, oh no, that's not. But he's we went for lunch. That was more than an hour.
No, well, you can sort of hear it under Karl's breath. He goes, I ate it. That's an interesting question, actually. Has any of the listeners of the show
slick edit in there, Mars? Sorry, he just cut out a bit of himself stumbling over his words. But I'm one to speak because he's cut.
I'll try again. Are there any bits that are kind of cut out or things that they've said just slightly off mic, any of the presenters, that you think that people have missed but you've heard and you still find them funny? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. There's still times now where I'll be listening to a show and I'll hear something that was said like off air slightly or off mic or just as they're going into the record, and I think all these years I'd never ever heard that. So it still happens, and some of them are quite funny, but in general,
it's so funny when you've listened to the shows how often, as much as we have, you pretty much know what's coming next. You could feel like you could transcribe them verbatim. But it's funny, like every now and again you sort of like hear something you haven't heard before and you're like, oh, what was that? But it's interesting because Steve says, is it different when there's three people in the room? Because then he starts just showing off, which I actually think, because Ricky's obviously quite an extrovert person. He does feed off people's energy, doesn't he? Like he likes an audience. They've even said before, like Steve said before, he's meant to say something at Band Aid. He says, you don't get nervous, do you? Ricky Gervais doesn't get nervous. But he was actually nervous then because he was introducing REM. And that's what it takes to put Ricky Gervais on edge. I can imagine that he likes a crowd. He likes an audience. That's part of the look at me gene, that comedians like all probably have. We all probably do have that to some degree.
Ironically, there's a lot of comedians who are actually, conversely, completely socially shy and introverted. Like Rod Gilbert did a great show. He's got proper anxiety. He can't walk up to someone in a bar and ask for a coffee, but he can stand in front of hundreds of, maybe thousands of people and with a microphone. But there's something about Ricky doesn't have the introvert thing at all. But there are a lot of comedians who aren't just extroverts; they're actually introverts. But Ricky is an extrovert. But yeah, think of how nerve-wracking it must be to go out and present the Golden Globe, especially for the first time. Just go out and stand there on stage with all these people, these famous people who or even just doing a huge stand-up show. Very rarely, Mars is doing it next year, the Oscars 2020.
Because I've never been up.
No, Ricky does never get nervous, really, and that's an amazing trait to have, because most people do feel nerves, but Ricky, especially after a beer, he's...
Yeah. Karl comes back to Suzanne and says, what have you been talking about with Ricky? There's nothing that I can say that would make... And they said the only way you can have a kid would be to sleep with a squid what would you do?
Yeah.
And if anyone want to kid that one, just but Ricky's taking it deadly serious, and they do actually do that in extras, with his relationship with Maggie, and they do. What would you rather do? This or that? This or that? This or that?
Yeah.
And he does carry that on. That is a kind of motif, as you will, through his writing career.
That's a great point, actually. I'd never thought about this, but the Maggie character, she's absolutely not written to be like a female Karl Pilkington at all, but she's a very rounded character, and she's very intelligent deep down as a character, but there are parts like she is quite slow to get things, and they're writing Karl into that, really, aren't they?
That's the Karl DNA, 100%.
It's a great point.
Yeah, thanks very much. I wrote it to be. But I've never had a conversation like that with anyone. Actually, my conversation with my friends are often, when people go, with your friends, what do you talk about? You go, oh, it's quite a hard thing to question, because you don't really sit there and analyse your conversations with your friends, do you? Because me and you, I don't really have like daft, silly chats with people. I often go, so tell me about your feelings. What are your emotions like at the moment?
Well, I would just say our chats are usually either deep. Actually, if we say we talk on the phone for 2 hours, which we've done quite a few times, an hour will be deep kind of chat and stuff about where we're going in the future and where are we going with it. An hour will be quotes from the show related to what the other person has just said that fit in some way. Like, we're just obsessed with quoting the show. So yeah, but no, we don't have these daft sort of chats, do we? But most people don't.
But Gary, if you did have to have a sleep with a squid to have a kid, would you?
I'd sleep with most things now, I think. Yeah. Letterbox. No, I wouldn't. I'm not that. No, I've
not that shallow.
Of course, I wouldn't. No one would. I think. I don't want a kid anyway. Actually.
All right.
It's getting a bit deep now. Let's go for a break. I'm trying to get a bloody printer this week. I got it for free. Because
where'd you get it?
I've dyslexia from the student funding people. They just sent me one. One
of the many perks of having 3 legs and a student loan.
No, I have it's a grant actually. No, I have dyslexia, so they sent me a free printer, which is nice of them, and I need it. But I'm trying to work it, and I cannot bloody work it. So I'm gonna just use it to put ornaments on. What
kind of ornaments have you got?
I've got a scented candle.
Yankee?
No, I think it's just
version of the poor man's Yankee.
I've got some DVDs I never watched. They're basically ornaments at this stage in my life. I've actually got some fish food as well from my fish. Do you remember Alan?
Gary had a fish called Alan, the loneliest fish in the world.
With the loneliest
unmatched in Gary's own loneliness. Yeah. And they loved each other.
He used to swim to his side. He did. He swam up as soon as he saw me.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, because he wanted food, obviously.
Yeah, he didn't want to see you. He just wanted.
And when he died, I took him to the beach to bury him.
That's so sweet.
Yeah. So I've still got his fish food. So I've got that's an ornament. I've got 2 photos that I never put on the wall because all I've got is these. When my dad came round, he put some hooks in. I don't want to put any hook. I don't want to hammer. I don't want to pick up a tool.
Well, Gary was talking about earlier in the show, ladies and gentlemen, about his ex-girlfriend coming around to put up a bed to save himself 200 quid.
When we split up, my ex-girlfriend and we were on speaking terms roughly. I was saying she owed me. Not that I counted that much, but she owed me about £157.30. She owed me about 150 quid. I got my bed delivered from Argos, and I was like, I almost expected someone to come and put it up for me from Argos, but delivery. I hadn't even considered. It was just all these pieces. I was like, there's no way I can do this. I can't do it. On the side, it said for one. It said assembly for one person. So anyway,
that's rubbing in.
Yeah, I rang up Daisy and said, Daisy, can you come round? I know you owe me some money. I'll let you off all the money. So she came down to my flat.
Like she remembered the money. Like she was going to get.
No, she would have. But she was like, she built it. But also it was Gay Pride, and I live right near Gay Pride Festival, so she couldn't get a bus. She had to walk through these crowded, hot throngs of streets all the way to my flat, toil over a bed, and she put it up because when we were together, she built all the furniture. If we had a set of drawers delivered, don't you?
Pathetic.
I know it's pathetic, but there you go.
So whilst people were out there, staying up late and ironing their jeans, you were inside setting up a bed for one with your ex-girlfriend.
Well, no, I wasn't. I didn't even help. She always says to me, "Don't help. You're making it worse. You are making it worse." She said, "You making this more difficult." I don't like trying to hold a spanner or something. It's like you didn't even need a spanner.
I just imagine you go over and over again. Do you want a cup of tea? And she's like sweating, got like oil over her forehead for no reason.
Do you want a cup of tea? Kettle's in there, love. If you want.
Listen, we're back. This is the D Trout Spinners podcast with Miles and Gary. We're about to do some of our favourite quotes.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you want to start this week?
Yeah, I will. Let's do. I've got 4. Glorg back in the ship.
Yeah, that's good. Again, I've already said it, but would anyone want a kid that much?
It's very good.
It's very good.
I'd love that. It's when Karl's talking about aliens. I'd love that.
I'd love that. We've got Gibbon on the horn. The way he kind of breaks, because he does that thing, and I love it. I've talked about it before, where he'll start right close to something when he's taking the mick. If it's Dickie Anders' nickname, if it's something like that, or if it's Rodney Plonker, like he'll start with something quite believable. Simple. But then he just sort of says, "Monkey, we got Gibbon on the horn." It doesn't mean anything, but so I love that.
He was walking in heels. He was walking in heels. That's funny.
Oh, okay. So this is a quote that is it's quite long. It's a combination of Steve and Ricky, but I included it anyway. The very beginning bit is Steve. Do you like custard? No. Well, if you don't, you don't. Do you like wine? Of course I do.
You are gonna love it.
We've sent that to each other.
I've got that. In fact, I think we should call this show "Do You Like Custard?"
Like what, my son? When Ricky's
I love that. What? I didn't put that one in. Like what, my son? Could you pop some of his skin in the frame? $4.99. Yeah. This is one of Ricky's slurs as well. However, how overworked am I that I can't sort out a story about a monkey?
About a monkey, yeah.
The way he says monkey, the intonation of that monkey.
Yeah, he does. He's very good.
I love intonation, Gary. I love it.
Mars learned a new word this week. Intonation. Okay, this is my last one. I'm favorite. I forgot to bring in a song for the ladies this week, so I thought I'd play a song for the people who enjoy the work of Deep Purple.
I've got just 2, right? So it's Now Come Over and Suck Mummies. And then another one, my last one is, so I don't know what we were talking about there.
Yeah, that's good.
Karl just trying to wrap up a link, but doing it in the most, in the worst way.
But what other show has a producer that says that? I don't know what we're talking about there. Like, who says that? I don't know. But anyway.
Do send in your favourite quotes, ladies and gentlemen, at trout_de or trout.de at gmail.com.
Please do that. But now we've got actually my favourite section. Mars hates it. He told me off air. He doesn't like listeners. He says it's okay, but he really hates reading their stuff out. And I'm like, okay, well, mate, we've got to do it. I love it. Mars hates it. It's XFM in the community.
Didn't have to write these out and copy and paste them into a doc and then read them out in a linear order.
No, he loves it as well. We both love it. So, Mars, what feedback have we had this week?
So this is from John D. I used to listen to the shows at bedtime. But see, when you listen during the day, driving to work, etc., the dynamic is totally different. I literally laugh out loud. Although I did skip to Andrew Phillips, which was a great show. We interviewed the ex-controller of XFM, so do listen to that.
We wouldn't say it's great. It was great for us. We loved it. We loved doing it.
No, this is what he said.
Really?
John said.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. He says, I haven't listened to Dickers yet. Looking forward to that. It was 2006-ish that I stumbled upon the XFM stuff. I was gripped with the Guardian podcasts, and as I mentioned, the dynamic of it and me finding it even funnier during the day as opposed to snoring is amazing.
Yeah.
There's all these like memes and stuff going around at the moment of like people trying to sleep and then Ricky laughs and then they wake up. This is from Xanthia, fan of the show Xanthia. I asked people if they could go back and listen, would they have liked to have gone back and listened to the XFM shows for the very first time? Because that would have been a very different experience, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was only 13 years old when I discovered them, so no, I wouldn't. Wow. So, I don't know, 13, very traumatic time, as you can tell from my earlier anecdote about my legs being chopped off.
Xanthia, did you jump over any rollers, whatever they are, in the park when you're there?
This is from Katie Pepper. She says, the day I found Series 0 only about 2 years ago was the best day ever. Not as good without Karl, but it still counted as new. These are so revered in people's lives. They literally, people remember, the first time they heard an XFM show. I love that.
Their first kiss.
Yeah.
One day I'll have a memory of my first kiss as well.
Yeah, you will. This is from Russell.
I kissed my pillow.
That counts. Still counts. This is from Russell. I tried and find them all, but I wonder if I've missed any. There's a whole swathe of people who are still on the lookout on the hunt.
There's so many. I bet you have missed. I bet we've missed. There's the one they did on BBC. There's only one they did on like Radio 2. Yeah, so those ones, they're not as good, but check them out. And obviously then you've got the podcast, but I have mixed feelings about the podcast. But yeah, basically there's between the three of them as a trio. And I was saying the other week that there's very few trios in life. Very few. There's duos. There's people on their own, and there's sort of there's groups of people who perform together, but very few trios. If you think just their work as a trio, there's hundreds and hundreds of hours of content, and that's amazing. There's no other trio with that amount of content, especially like there's hardly any other trios. But
it'd be nice to see like what we haven't heard, because surely there were times obviously when Karl didn't hit the recorder. I think he's mentioned that in like a previous interview that I've listened to him when in. Yeah, so there must be all these like unheard years and years probably audio that just has sort of slipped under the radio. Or maybe, do you know the ones I would love to hear is about when Karl was working at a hospital radio station. I would have loved
to have heard that. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that would have just been amazing. Earlier in the week, we put a question out on our Twitter thread at Trout_DE. Gary set that up. Don't have a go. And where we basically asked, what's your favourite Karl in film? And which films do you wish he'd put himself in? He'd inserted himself in. A lot of people are saying, I'm going to say this, Kes is up there. This seems to be a landslide at the moment. So this is from Simon. Simon says Kes is the best, but loves Scrooge. We're jamming.
Yeah.
Which, Scrooge, I think Scrooge is probably my favourite. Garlic bread
is one of my favourite moments of the show of all time. Like, it's one of my favourites. I absolutely love it. Garlic bread.
This is from Robbie Layard. He says Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction is not one of my favourites personally. But it's interesting to see what he does with the narrative, because he transposes it, doesn't he? The scene at the end and the diner.
And in the hairdressers. That he's portraying. Yeah, it's not one of my favourites, but it's a good one. They're all
well,
good.
He's got such a good imagination, hasn't he, Karl? Like he's had to come up with this. Essentially it's a sketch. He's not a copywriter, but it's a sketch.
He's very good technically. He can do all the editing, but yeah, you're right. He's got a very good imagination, because you have to conceive of these things. Especially the first ones, because after that they were suggesting ones he should do, and Ricky and Steve were probably giving him advice like, "Oh, do this one," but when the first one, Ricky and Steve didn't come up with the feature. They didn't come up with any features. They didn't give a shit. He just did it on his own. Like, I'll put myself into a film, and he does it, and it's so good. It's such a clever thing to do and to conceive of, and then to execute. And he was head of production at a very busy radio station. They joke about like his day and him being lazy. He was anything but lazy. Like, to do that in your free time, that will take, imagine editing all that together, but also conceiving it. That would add hours onto his days. That's like almost a day's work. And he did it as well as having a job and working Saturday. So actually, I think he deserved Monday off. That's why Ricky is so out of order when he criticises him.
Well, that's what it is. It says, well, I know that because you would have come in on Monday, and so you've done that on your day off. So you would have taken the piss even more.
He's so rude, but it's funny anyway.
This is from Adam Ratcliffe. He says The Graduate was the best one, but Kes was pretty good. Sam, Kes is a masterpiece. Matt Gibson, Kes was the best one. This one's from Sarah. She says The Graduate. Get your knickers off.
Yeah, get your knickers off.
Get your knickers off. That's nice. Yeah. This is from Lucan.
Could I just say at this point, like, we sort of say names we could have named the show and things like that, but very, very close. It was in the final sort of three that I was considering, and it was really close. Was How Do You Spell That? That was going to be that from Kes, obviously. So that was I loved the Kes.
How do you spell that?
How'd you spell that?
Did I tell you I was watching an old Simpsons episode, the one with the lemon tree.
Oh yeah.
There is a mention here, and says
where they go to Shelbyville.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, and Milhouse and his friend are selling lemonade, and says, "With squoze and the last lemon."
Oh really?
Yeah. This one is from Lucan. When I first heard the Karl film bits, I was really impressed on how seamless they were. Contradicted what Rick and Steve said about his production abilities.
Absolutely, good point.
Ricky took the piss out of him, saying he works with sound. But after all these, I think they were even a little impressed.
Yeah, absolutely. Very good point.
This is from Nick T. Nick says, Kes and a few good men. All right, Tom. Also forgot how good Planet of the Apes was too. Planet of the Apes is probably my least favourite, I have to say.
No, it's not a standout one for me.
But I know I mentioned it, but I do like the one with obviously Rain Man.
Yeah, that's good. Again, it's not my favourite, but
it's because the little clever things when they're talking about the book, but he makes the book sound like he's talking about his little book of freaks.
Yeah, of course. Again, a great imagination to do that. It's not my favourite one. My favourites are Kes. The Scrooge one actually is not the great one. The whole of the Scrooge one is like, it's okay. It's not that funny. It's still very impressive that he did it, but it's worth everything. Everything is for the garlic bread. The garlic bread makes it the better. one of the least favourite to my probably second favourite of all. So
I find it funny as well because at that time, end of the noughties, like the big rivalry literally was. I know it wasn't like a Blur Oasis thing, but it was like Peter Kay versus Ricky Gervais, or at least Ricky Gervais's perspective, because Phoenix Nights was a fucking huge show, and we'll probably come back to this, when they're talking about the ideal dinner guest that Karl has to come up with. Well, he goes, he's funny, isn't he? Well, why would you say Peter Kay when you're friends with Ricky Gervais?
Yeah. Ricky talks very openly about, not even in a joking mode. He sort of says, he's like for example, we've won a lot. I know we've won a lot. Peter Kay, he's won a lot. They basically they were up for every award, and probably The Office in the end ended up winning about 3/4 of them. So, but The Office won lots more, which is right because it's better. But Phoenix Nights is a very good sitcom.
And if you're not from the UK, Phoenix Nights was a comedy sitcom written by Peter Kay, and it basically depicted the lives of a group of people who were running this social club. In the north of England, and it's very, very funny. It's just great, isn't it?
It's very sweet as well, and it's like an adult social club. So it's not like a social club during the day. It's like things that like they have different guests and things. And Peter Kay plays more than one character, and he's very good. Peter Kay is incredibly talented, and he's more known for stand-up now, but he's done lots of good shows. But you're right, at that time it was like a Blur Oasis thing in my head, particularly because I like both of them. As with Blur and Oasis, I like both of them, but I preferred one of them, and that was Oasis then, and The Office I much preferred. So to see them win all the awards was great. But yeah, it was always like if there was an award for best sitcom and you had The Office, Phoenix Nights, and then 4 others, the 4 others could forget it. Basically, it was going to be Phoenix Nights or The Office. So yeah, Peter Kay, great guy, but not quite as good as The Office. But
so if you want to hear your thoughts or opinions on our feature, this is XFM in the community. An opportunity for you to hear your voices heard, and to build connections. And this is what we like to see with kind of the reason why we started the podcast recently.
And actually, a little thing, because you said this to me off air, like before we started, like a thing you're going to start. Actually, if you want to literally hear your voices heard, get in touch with some audio as well, because I'm not sure how we need to kind of formalise this in some way, but at the moment, just sort of send us in some way 3 or 4 seconds of audio, and we might put you in at the beginning of the show so you can literally hear your voice.
And all you need to do is send in like a quote, your favourite quote. Yeah, like you said,
Doesn't
3 or
have
4
to be
minutes.
Quote, could be other.
Could even slag us off. Do send it as an MP3 file. Gary doesn't know what that is, but
I want MP2s, mates.
If you could email that in at trout.de@gmail.com. And that kind of wraps up the D Trout Spinners podcast. We do have one little feature that I like to end on. Gary's running to get his little iPod feature, little monkey fella out of his pocket. This is the XFM library. Basically, each week Gary and I select a track that either has some sentimental or an inspirational song, or a song that you'd like to hear as you came on stage.
Okay, I've got one, so I can go for it. So again, this was one that was kind of takes me back. It takes me back. It was they were a Britpop band, but they weren't, because it was a female singer. It wasn't like the classic Britpop. I'm not saying it was worse. It was just different. But it's Catatonia, Road Rage. That really reminds me of my sort of childhood and sort of 13, 14, 15 years old with two working legs the whole time. Anyway, go on, what's yours, mate?
My one is they do play a bit of Bruce Springsteen this episode, and they've played this song actually on the show. But I'm going to play my favourite Bruce Springsteen song, which is Atlantic City.
Oh, I love it. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Great. And I saw Bruce Springsteen live actually at the Isle of Wight Festival, which was wonderful. Just such an electric, dynamic performer. Huge performance, goes on for like 3 hours. Like, he really is, as Steve describes him, like, he doesn't let up. He plays on. He's incredible.
Yeah. Did you know, in fact, Bruce Springsteen, I don't know if this is true today, but about 5 years ago it's certainly true, and it probably is still true today. Bruce Springsteen has never had a #1 single in the UK or the US.
Really?
Never had a #1 in the UK
Is
or
that
the
true?
US. Yeah, apparently so. I'm sure his albums have been to #1 and things, but yeah, never had a #1 single.
Didn't know that. You're learning. You listen and you learn here at the D Trout Spinners podcast.
Well, I do write for the NME in my spare time, so
that's almost all we got time for, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening.
Well, no, that is awful. That's everything.
Yeah, that is.
Anyway, yeah, thank you for listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks for all your feedback. Do get in touch with your feedback. We really like to hear what you think. And also send in your audio, and we'll put you on next week. But yeah, it's been great, Mars. Thanks for your tireless efforts.
Hey,
brilliant.
Don't worry. I'm here until at least the next episode, which will come next week. Thank you for listening, everyone. We love you lots.
Yeah, well, we love your feedback. I do, genuinely. We love doing this, and we love the interaction that you guys kind of contribute to it. You make the show. It's not a show without you. Barely a show with you, but it's certainly not a show without you. Thanks for listening. See you next week.